A very, very good morning, everybody. It is really an honor and a privilege to be here today. I want to really thank you for getting me to exercise my mind on what my why was. And I still actually don't know the answer. And I spent quite a bit of time thinking about this. But thank you very much. It is really great to be here. I think it is great that we are holding these kind of sessions and these kind of conferences in our space here in the southern tip of Africa right now. And I'll get into that when we think about what's been happening and the pressure that's been put on government at the moment, specifically around crime and gender-based violence, etc., which I'll get to in a moment. But I'm going to speak about why your attitude affects the economy. And of course your attitude affects the economy. But before I get there, I had to ask myself the question, why? Why do I do what I do? What is my why? And I think for some people, I think it's really, really easy. I presume that Elon Musk, it's easy for him. He wants to go and live on Mars. So everything he does helps him get to live on Mars. He has to develop battery technology, he has to build rockets, he has to do all sorts of things because he wants to go and live on Mars. That's quite an easy why. Done. I think about my son, Jason, 20 years old. He's known what his why is from when he was this big, running between the speakers, listening to the stereo while Freddie Mercury was singing. He knew he had to make music. And no matter how often I told him that science was really important and one of these days he's going to have to get a real job, he always told me, Dad, just leave me alone. Music is my life. Music is what I want to do. He's 20 years old. He's only second year into his studies. And I had to take him to a financial advisor the other day to advise him on his dollar account and what to do with all the money that he's making out of his music at the moment. He knows what his why is. Even my wife knows what her why is. She knows that she wants to be involved in changing the consciousness of this planet. But I ask myself, what is my why? And I still don't know what it is. It's got something to do with happiness. It's got something to do with people and their happiness. It's got something to do with finding solutions. Because I started off life as an entrepreneur, starting all these businesses. I love the challenge. I love the challenge of seeing a problem and then starting a business to fix the problem. And when the business was running and the marketing guys and the financial guys were doing their thing, I got bored. And I would go and start the next business. Because I loved finding solutions for challenges. And so it's probably got something to do with finding solutions. I think I'm an opportunist because I think that entrepreneurs are opportunists. But what exactly my why is, I think I'm still getting there. It's probably, and in my analysis, it's about service. It's about making a difference. And if I think in the job that I do at the moment, it's that phone call you get, or even this morning when someone comes and just says, all I want to say is thank you, nothing else. When that person phones you in the middle of the night with an absolute crisis or conundrum, and you can make a phone call, you can find someone within the system that can sort that little problem out, I'm a happy man. And so probably my why is something to do with happiness and service. And so you heard that I started life as an entrepreneur in Knysna, and I was an entrepreneur because it was never in any specific direction, from a tour company to a bicycle shop to a resin molding company to a courier company to a tour company to a travel agency to boat covers and tarpaulins and tents. I did all sorts of things. If someone had a problem and they couldn't find a product, I'd start the business. And that was what I used to do. And I used to start the business, I used to get it going, And once it was going, I used to get bored. And then at least use that business to fund my next operation. And then I got a calling. I don't know how this happened, but I went to a local community meeting in Knysna, and it was the rural elections in 96, 94. Our democracy started in 95, our municipal elections, and in 96, the rural areas. And my home is just outside Belvedere in Knysna. In those days, that was outside of the municipal area. And in that meeting, we asked a question. In 2 months' time, the rural elections are taking place, and who are we going to vote for? And at that stage, there were two political parties standing. It was the National Party and the ANC. And I said in this public meeting, I said, well, I'm not interested in voting for either of those two parties. And we said, well, next month is the next meeting, and let's see if we can find another party to stand. I went away on business the next week, and when I got home after the business trip, I asked my neighbor how the meeting went, and he said, we've decided that we're going to put up an independent candidate for this election. And I said, oh, that's excellent. That's actually a great idea. Who's the candidate? And they said, it's you. And so my signwriting and my screen printing company printed banners and posters and pamphlets, and my staff from all my businesses were handing out these pamphlets. My constituency was from Plettenberg Bay to Mossel Bay, I'll have you know. It was massive, and all my vehicles were driving around, and suddenly my office was a political office, the Outeniqua Independent Party, and I got myself elected in 1 month. And I've never been able to get out of politics since then. For two reasons. I think the first thing is there's obviously some divine intervention, because every time I've decided that, okay, that's it, it's enough, or my auditor would say, of all of your companies and then your political expenses, you're making profits over here, but have a look at the loss. And I'd say, okay, well, at the end of the year, I'm finished with politics. And then something else would happen, and I'd be drawn back in again. And I moved from local politics to provincial politics, and in provincial politics, from opposition to government. I've been in government for 10 years, and I've never been bored once. Every time I've seen the problem, and I promise you, I find solutions every day to many, many things. In my office, they call it the pits. It's another idea that I come up with, and they say, no, this is another pits idea. You've got to park this one. And I actually employ someone in my office to keep me focused, to stop with those ideas, so we focus on the main thing, so we keep the main thing the main thing. But I've never been bored. And so I think about the first thing that I did, that was a program called Work and Skills. It was a problem. Our youth unemployment rate is one of the highest, or it is the highest now in the world. I got into government. We had a policy called the youth wage subsidy, or a voucher system for youth wages. I found 30 million rand. We subsidized business to put young people in work. The next thing, the National Treasury under the carpet said to me, don't tell the national government because they'll freak out, but here's 70 million to carry on with that project. And it eventually became a tax deduction, and if you employ someone under the age of 34, you can claim back a tax deduction on the youth wage subsidy. I went to Pravin Gordon and I said to Pravin, we need to become the finance hub of Africa. Mauritius is doing amazing things. And we put a program in place. No, first of all, he said, no, we're in a recession. We need to take some haircuts now. We can't do some new things. I went and worked with UCT. We put a finance program in place. And beginning of last year, Cape Town became the finance hub of sub-Saharan Africa. We put broadband investment in place, and I can speak on this for hours. But we are now the tech hub of Africa between Cape Town and Stellenbosch. And we started an energy program 7 years ago where there were only 2 energy providers in Cape Town, Eskom and our Steenbros hydro plant. And today, as I stand here, there are 3,000 independent power producers in this city alone. That's not enough. My message here would be, if you haven't put a solar panel and system on your roof, you better do it now, because Eskom is going to be in big trouble, big trouble. You think they're in big trouble now, it's going to get worse. But getting back to why our attitude, and who's the timekeeper? How am I doing? Oh, I'm doing cool, thank you. Maybe then what I'm going to say, seeing as I've got a couple more minutes, I'm going to say that I'm going to say that I then ended up doing those things as the finance and the economics minister in this region. And then it came time to probably get out again, and some other intervention came along and said, no, you must put your hand up and you must get involved in this process in politics to put your name forward to become the premier of this province. Half my friends think I'm stone raging mad because it's taking away from my cycling time. But I put my hand up, I went through the process, and the next thing I found myself catching this ball. And so again, now I've got to look at solutions. I've got to look at solutions for our problems. I've also got to look at our constitutional mandate, because now I'm the premier of a province, and the constitution says in a province you've got to make sure that you put education systems and processes in place, and you've got to make sure we have a health system. And most of our money, our 67 billion rand that we spend in this province, goes to health and education. And we are still in severe trouble, because at the moment, even as I stand here today, almost at the end of the year, we've got 27,000 children in our province that are still not placed, that are in excess, that are in classrooms that are way too big. And we should be putting billions into, well, we do put billions, but more billions into the education system so we can build more schools. So we've built 124 schools actually up until now, new schools. And our problem now is we can't maintain the old ones because we're building too many new ones too quickly. But the demand is way outstripping. And so this is my next conundrum down the line when I get to education. But I had to think about it, and the biggest problem that we face at the moment is safety. Crime is out of control. We are the murder capital of Africa. And so now, as Michael said, I've now announced a safety plan that is the biggest safety plan that any province has ever announced. And component of it is policing on the ground. 3,000 people are going to be employed by us to top up policing, managed by us, using data now rather than outdated. Using data now in deployment and management to get ahead of the curve rather than outdated, a year late crime statistics as we hear at the moment. And deploying these people into hotspot areas so we really start to make the difference. The pilot project run by the city of Cape Town in Winde showed us that that's what we've got to do. Winde, an average of 13, 14 murders a month. At some stage this year, they had 23 murders in 1 month, and we deployed just 100 safety officers to Winde, and they deployed on the 1st of July, and the murder rate came down to 0 in the first month and 1 in the second month. If you deploy where the need is, you can make the difference. So then we put this plan together. But the plan is not actually about the boots on the ground. The plan is about interventions in the first 1,000 days of a child's life. The plan is about that pre-primary ECD space. And how do you identify children that are growing up in high crime areas, that we make sure that we're dealing with the trauma that they deal with every single day because they live in a crime area, and we're helping them fix their brains while they are developing and still asking the question why. That we're intervening at that space and right through the formative years of our young people in those hot crime spots, those hotspot areas. How we are identifying young people, and we had a discussion this morning, that are at school at the moment that are disruptive. They're the risk takers, but they're disruptive in our classrooms. Our teachers don't know how to deal with them. We need to empower our teachers to deal with those disruptive boys, because at the moment when we can't deal with them, we eject them out of the classroom. They end up spending time on the street, and they're the perfect recruitment space for the gangs. So all we do is we actually speed up the process of getting young people into gangs. Instead of saying, let's intervene. How do we withdraw that young guy, put him through a chrysalis program or some kind of program that we actually directionize that person's mind so that that person becomes the entrepreneur of tomorrow that sells something that makes us planet positive rather than selling drugs that make us planet negative. And so that's this plan. And that's what I thrive on, that's what I love, and that is my why. But let's talk about attitude of people in this region, about the attitude of business and whether business attitude affects our economy. And of course, my answer to that is absolutely yes. But I'm going to go a little bit further than just the attitude of business. Because, of course, we measure that. It's called business confidence. We measure it. Whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. But I've been watching the citizens of this region for a while. And I actually got a bit of an applause when I mentioned data. I was speaking about crime statistics in Parliament yesterday, and I was saying, we get in this country, we get our crime statistics a year too late. It's a history lesson. But when I got in my car after the debate, Google told me, because they assumed I was going home because it was 10:30 last night after Open Thursdays, assumed I was going home and told me how long it was going to take me to get. I didn't ask them. I didn't ask Google this. Google just told me. So why are we not using data and technology and social media platforms, etc., to make this place a safer place? To make sure that our attitude is right in business so that we actually grow positivity and we actually turn this space around. How are we doing that? And how are we doing? Well, quite frankly, I think we are doing shockingly. So my first example is the gender-based violence uprising, and I was at the march outside Parliament. I arrived late because I had a meeting. My wife and daughter were almost in the middle up the front, and I remember walking through all the people, thousands of people standing there, and it was a real emotional experience walking through everyone standing there saying enough is enough. And I had to walk through. I spent some time listening to some of the speakers, spent some time with my wife and my daughter, and from there I walked out again because I had to go to another meeting. And it was amazing seeing people stand up for the right thing. But we had a World Economic Forum meeting at that same time here in our city. And people went to protest at the World Economic Forum, which is also the right thing. The best place to protest and get your message out is at G8 summits and World Economic Forums. It happens around the world. We marched down to the CTICC to speak to the world about enough is enough, no more violence. And it was great, except our attitude. And when we got there, what we did was we broke down the barriers. We smashed the security guards aside. We became so violent in our anti-violent protest that we lost the plot. I watched social media. The violence in the language, in dealing with violence, says that we don't know what our why is if we really want to tackle crime and violence in this space. Our language as society with each other is horrendous. We have to change it. Did we not learn anything from Gandhi? Did we not learn anything from Gandhi? Imagine if everybody had gone outside the World Economic Forum, sat on the road outside just calmly with their placards. Every media house from around the world would have turned their cameras and their microphones away from those business leaders to the other side of the road to get this message across the world. But no, the front pages with pictures of water cannons and barriers being broken out. We lost the plot. We didn't really ask ourselves, why are we doing what we're doing? And what is the result we want to get to at the end of the day? So, of course, attitude matters. But attitude matters not only in business. Attitude matters across society. And our society needs to be fixed. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is, what is it? What is it that we need to make sure that we really start to fix in our system? And it is our set of values. I think our values here in the southern tip of Africa have been lost. Those core values that we all should be instilling in our brothers and sisters here in the southern tip of Africa. And whether I want to try and fix the safety environment of our region, or we need to sit here today to understand why we do what we want to do, we've got to make sure all of this is based in a set of values. And I know I've got the red card, but I have to end off And you're dealing with a politician here, so I'm very sorry, Mr. Timekeeper. I have to end off with a very short story on values. I tell this often, and I tell everybody I'm looking for the South African story, because I'm not telling the South African story here, and I'm waiting for someone to tell me what that South African story is. I'm in Australia. I'm going to a meeting, and I'm in a little town called Launceston. And my clock is out because I'm on the other side of the world. I'm wide awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. I get out of bed, I shower, I get dressed, I go down to the kitchen. The baker's busy baking the breakfast, but the kitchen staff haven't started yet. And I scrounge something to eat. And by 6 o'clock, I'm out on the streets, walking around, having a look, because I've never been to Launceston before. But it's 6 o'clock in the morning. The town is waking up. The odd person walking to work, the odd car here and there, and I'm walking around just having a look at this beautiful little town. And I'm walking down the pavement, and I look across the road, and there is a park. And in the park, there is a monument. So I decide I'm going to go and have a look at this monument. What's this monument about? And what I do is I look up the road, and it's quiet. And I step off the pavement, and I start to walk towards the monument. I'm no longer off the pavement, and some guy with his rucksack on grabs me by the arm and pulls me back onto the pavement. I thought I was being robbed because I was from South Africa. But he pulled me back onto the pavement and he said to me, "Sorry, sir, we don't do that here. Here, you walk down to the end of the road, there is a traffic light with a little green flashing man, and the pedestrian crossing, and that's where you cross so you can get to the park on the other side." I was blown away. I was blown away because in Australia, the citizens have not only embedded a set of values within themselves, they are prepared to share those values with their fellow citizens, and in actual fact, they're prepared to help their fellow citizens back onto the right path when they step off the pavement. That's how far they're prepared to go. When are we in this region going to understand that we've got to actually help our brothers and sisters get back onto the path? We've got to pull everyone back onto the pavement when we step off the pavement. That's what we have to do to get underlying value sets going back into our system. So that in actual fact, at the end of the day, I can actually start putting my mind to the education system and finding solutions for the education system in really exercising my why on finding solutions and finding happiness. I need to be able to do that, and I can only do that when we really start to embed and entrench a real value set. So when you see someone dropping a piece of paper on the ground, grab them by the arm, pull them back onto the pavement, pick up that piece of paper and put it in the bin. And from littering and lying and language on social media, all the way to murder on the other side, we've got to set values and fix them in the middle so that we can actually make a way better Western Cape and a way better South Africa. Thank you very much.